Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge.
And I'm Ashley Sledge.
And let's talk horror.
Today we're going to do a review on The Moor 2023.
So a little synopsis about this movie. Claire is approached by the father of her murdered childhood friend to help investigate the haunted moor he believes is his son's final resting place. So he just needs that type of closure. He feels like Claire is one of the people that can really help him, and we find out why during the movie.
So we're going to give some positives, we're going to give some negatives, and then we're going to spoil the film for you. So please listen to our positives, listen to our negatives, and if you haven't seen The Moor, watch The Moor, and then come back and listen to our spoilers.
This is definitely a movie that you should watch spoiler-free.
Absolutely.
I had a lot of fun with this movie. I'm very excited to talk about it. We're doing something a little different today, too. We're going to give our own interpretations of what happens at the ending. So a little bit of an ending explained thing here as well. So, but first, let's get to our positives.
So some of the positives, the sound design and score by Andrew Mayfield is very unnerving, and it's gloomy, and it fits so well with what's happening in the movie, and it just makes you feel the anxiousness.
Yeah, the anxiety, the dread that goes along with these feelings really, really hits thanks to the score and the sound design. We always talk about score, but a lot of the sound design and what he does in that aspect works so well throughout this movie. The beginning sequence, you have all the missing children's posters and newspaper articles talking about the missing children around town. It's really well done, and it's a great touch to add to the fear of what's going on in this little town.
It just makes it feel really real.
Yes.
Like you have all these, like, another kid's missing, you know, the summer of fear. So it's a very great touch. The cinematography, we always talk about, like, we love the bird's eyes, but in this one in particular, it's like when the sun is going down and it's dark and you have the bird's eye of the moor and the mountains, and I think it looks so good. And just you seeing all the land and stuff, it's very beautiful.
All the fog.
Oh yeah.
Like when the fog's covering everything.
You see like part of the land, and then you see like the fog in the background, and it just looks dark and gloomy. It's a very great touch.
Really heightens everything when you see that. Another thing I love is they have the interview with the kids and the parents from the Summer of Fear, and it puts a real feeling to the story.
Yeah.
Because these are not characters in the movie. These are just random people that we're listening talk to because Claire's trying to get information about her for her podcast. And it feels like you're really watching like true crime and hearing these people talk about the things that they went through when they were kids, or how parents didn't want to let go of their children's hands even when they were at the grocery just for a little bit. So
or how they like had everything was fine until this started happening. Like we were allowed to go outside by ourselves and do this, and then after this happened we weren't allowed to.
They even had like a blueberry picking festival, and then it just stopped.
Yeah.
Everything just stopped. So really good touch.
So we already kind of touched on this, but this entire movie, you just feel this continuous feeling of just like hopelessness and dread, and it's just like this tension, and obviously we're talking about missing children and the gloominess and like the horrible feelings that come along with it, and you definitely feel that in this movie.
Yeah, and you have great performances throughout. Bill, Claire, Eleanor, they all give an amazing performance. And you really feel for them and what they're each going through in different, different areas of grief, different stages of grief, and what they're each going through, and showing the different feelings of grief and how they're each portraying it. Very, very well done.
Also, there is, and so I'm not going to get too much into detail about this, but there's this really cool bloody eye scene. I thought it looked really great. They did a great job with the makeup and
the way that it happens.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about in the spoilers
we will get into it, yes.
Yeah. And obviously we're not going to say too much, but this has a very dark ending. Don't go into this looking for some rainbows. Yeah. I love the ending to this film. And it's very ambiguous.
Yeah.
So, we're, like I said, in the spoilers, we're going to give our opinions. We each have differing opinions, too.
Slightly.
Right. On how we feel this movie ends and what is really happening in this town. So, but before we can do that, we got to talk to you guys about some of the negatives of The Moor.
So now we're going to get into some of the negatives. It is very much so a slow burn, but the last like 25 minutes or so are very intense. So
go ahead.
It's a pretty long movie, and a lot of it is slow.
It's a 2-hour movie. It didn't need to be.
No.
There's a lot of moments that could have been cut down out of this movie. And like she said, it's a slow burn. If a slow burn is not your thing, if you like action-packed, probably not the movie for you. And there's a lot of discussions between characters that's muffled for the purpose of Claire not being able to hear. But I think as the audience, none of it is like, spoiling what's happening. Spoiling what's happening. So I think that the audience should be a part of the conversation in these moments because, again, they're not huge plot points. There's nothing like... It's just muffled for the fact of being ambiguous to Claire. Mm-hmm. No reason for the audience to feel ambiguous about this, too, when it's not really important what they're discussing at many of the points.
So a lot of parts that could be cut down. There's a lot of, like, sitting around, not saying anything to each other, driving in a car, not saying anything to each other. And I get it. They're thinking, they're going through all of these thoughts in their heads, but
we don't have to see every time they're thinking.
Yeah, we don't need to see all that, and it definitely makes it drag a little bit.
And there's a lot of scenes of walking in the moor. Mm-hmm. A long shot of them walking, not saying to each other. If I have to sit through another movie this year of a person just walking and me following them and them not saying anything, I'm going to lose my fucking mind. So, they could have cut some of those scenes down. This movie would have been a perfect hour 15, hour and a half film. Mm-hmm. If you cut a half hour out of this movie, it probably ups my score even a little bit more.
Yeah. And then there's some dream sequences, and if you think too much about the story, it really pokes holes in it. So it's a good movie. But some of the things, if you think about it, it's like, that doesn't really make any sense.
And again, we're going to talk about that in the spoilers. Like, it's fun if you want to sit there and... for your first time watch, just, watch the movie, have fun, go with it. If you start to overthink it, it's very easy to poke a lot of holes into what's happening. And again, a lot of that can be explained by being open to interpretation, but there's still ways that you could poke holes into what's happening throughout the story. And we'll talk about that when we explain what we believe happened at the end. So, and like Ashley said, those dream sequences, unnecessary. Those are other moments you could have cut out. Like, there's no reason to see her 3 different times pop up in bed. So those are some of our negatives. Mm-hmm. But now, like I said, and like Ashley said at the very beginning, please watch this movie.
Yeah. It's worth a watch. It absolutely is worth a watch. And I think that...
You should go into the spoiler free.
Yeah, you don't want this spoiled for you.
Yes. This is one of my favorite watches of the year so far. And we went into this completely unspoiled, and I feel like that's the best way to watch this. So if you haven't, go watch it. If you have, let's go to the spoilers.
So we've warned you a couple different times. Now we're going to start spoiling things. So we begin, there's this little girl named Claire and her friend Danny, and she's trying to convince him to distract the cashier at a candy store so she can go in and steal candy. And she says, tell him that you're looking for your dad and that you're sad and you can't find your dad. And Danny's like, well, he's out of town. And what if they call him? And she's like, oh, they're not. So he goes in, he distracts the cashier. She takes the candy and goes to the little meeting point and waits for him. And he never shows up. So she's anxious. You hear her breathing. And so she goes back in the store and asks the cashier, and he's like, oh, the little boy that's looking for his dad, no, he came and got him.
Yeah, his dad picked him up.
And it's like, but his dad's out of town, so how did his dad come and get him?
Right. Well, come to find out, a bunch of kids in the town have gone missing. 5 to be exact. And you find out they arrest the man who took the kids, but they won't show his face or say his name on the news.
His face, yes.
Which, and then they say it in the movie, like they wanted to make it so that it calmed everybody's nerves. But the kids were like, how bad does this person look?
What does his face look like if they can't
show his face? It actually scared them more.
Yes.
How bad is he if they won't even show his face?
So now it's 25 years later, and they're going to let him out. And Danny's dad, Bill, wants Claire to go to the Moor. She had like this podcast that she's not very proud of. She said, I don't have a lot of views, and I can't really... I'm not a great podcaster, and I never really did stuff like that. I was just more like talking to people.
Well, they're trying to find something to make sure the guy goes back to jail.
Yeah, because he only got 25 years for 5 kids that they know of that went missing.
Right. Some police procedural stuff we find out, like the police messed up and, all that rigmarole with the yellow tape or red tape or whatever damn color the tape is. So Claire finds Bill and a man named Alex, and there's a moment where he's in the kitchen and he's holding like this pendulum and one of Danny's toys above a map of the Moor. And she's watching him from outside the window, and she knows that, like, what the hell are they doing?
On?
But Bill won't tell her anything. When she comes in, he's like, it's no big deal, whatever.
It's just an old friend.
Yeah, old friend.
Yeah, he doesn't go into detail at all.
Right.
So they go into the moor.
And the moor is huge.
It's this huge, it's like backcountry of land with like bogs and like areas. It's like almost like quicksand, but it's like mud that you can get sucked down into.
I do want to say real quick, as a kid, I thought quicksand was going to be a lot scarier in my real life than it actually has been. I had this like unreasonable fear of quicksand as a child. And I've never once had to experience. I thought it was going to be like just random spots of quicksand throughout my life. Mm-hmm. There's not. I had this, and it was an unreasonable fear of quicksand, you guys. Like, when I tell you I was terrified of quicksand as a kid, absolutely.
They really put that in our heads as kids. Like, this is going to be a lot.
So moments in this movie, I'm like...
It's that, and also, I thought that I was going to get a lot more drugs when we went Halloween. Like, when we got candy. Nobody gives us drugs either.
We try every year.
We do not try.
But anyway. We're like trick or treat.
Where's the good stuff? Anyways, so she gets pulled away, in the bog. Like the
distraction.
Yeah, the ranger told them we need to stick together. Like
stay close.
It's very hard to get lost and get turned around in here. Mm-hmm. And she gets distracted. She gets pulled away, and you kind of hear them in the distance yelling for her. And she finds a little girl's shoe.
So we're starting to see that, maybe Bill is onto something, mm-hmm. and there is something going on out here. Maybe we can keep this guy in prison. Eleanor touches the little girl's shoe, and the pendulum starts pointing at an area on the map. Mm-hmm. So we're meeting Eleanor now.
Yes. So this is
Alex's daughter.
Yeah, daughter.
The guy that was doing the pendulum. She comes to the house, and Alex is pissed. Mm-hmm. He's like, no, she's not doing this. But when she does, like, and this moment is so awesome. Mm-hmm. Like, the thing starts, like, snaking across, and, like, it stands up on its own to show them exactly where to go with the moor. Because, like I said, the moor is, like, 5 maps of land.
It's just this huge amount of land that nobody really...
When she goes to the one detective, she's like, yeah, this is the map of the moor. And he's like, you think this is the moor?
Yeah.
And he gets it on this box. It's like this whole thing.
A bunch of different ones. And he's like, I don't know why he's going here in particularly.
Right.
Well, we find out why. Because of the pendulum.
Because of the pendulum.
Yeah.
But this part with Eleanor, when she touches the shoe and, like,
the pendulum literally, like, goes on its side.
And goes.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite scenes in the whole... You like the fear of like, this is real. Mm-hmm. Like, there's something really here. It's not just some crazy guy with a pendulum spinning it.
Right.
Something's really happening now.
So then Bill circles where the pendulum goes. And then Eleanor decides, like, I'm going to go with you to the moor. And Alex is totally against it. We didn't really mention that when Eleanor does this kind of stuff, it really takes a lot out of her. Like, they have
a number code mm-hmm. that they give to each other to know that it's her that's coming.
Yeah, because it takes a lot out of her, and they don't want another spirit coming in through her. So they like you said, they have this number code, and so Alex doesn't want her to go to the moor. He knows that actually going to the area is going to take a lot out of her. So
she's like, I don't care.
Yeah,
she's like, one of us has to go. Dad.
She really wants to help Bill.
Yeah. Well, at this point, she gets there, and Eleanor starts speaking to this little girl, and she's like, well, can you show me where your hiding spot is?
Can you show me your hiding place?
And then they all run off, and then they end up...
the little girl runs from her, the spirit of the little girl. And so she runs after her.
And this is where we end up seeing, they fall into another one of those bogs, and we see a little girl's face right there stuck in the mud.
And when we see the little girl's face in the mud, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, it's so, like, shocking, but it looks really cool and just creepy. And so now they know that, like, they have this killer. Like, now that
it's scary.
Yes.
Like, this is a kid. Like, you see a little kid in the mud.
And it's preserved because it's been in this bog.
Right.
This peat bog, as they call it. Yeah. And then, so they know that they have this killer. They can... get him for more. And so this is when the killer agrees to show the police where he's been putting these kids.
We get the phone call.
Yeah.
That he's going to go out and show them where he put the kids. But Eleanor has a connection with a spirit named Thomas who mm-hmm. protects her from the other side. Thomas can talk through Eleanor, and he shows them on the map where Danny is. This is another part that's very anxious.
Yeah, like you're not allowed to look at Thomas.
Yeah, you can't look at Thomas because he's speaking through Eleanor.
And he doesn't like to be looked at straight on, so everybody's kind of looking, like,
and Bill's making it so much worse.
Yeah.
Where's my son? And he's like, Tom, and you can hear him talking. Thomas talking through Eleanor. A great scene, another amazing scene.
But you just kind of like you see Eleanor's like blurred figure, but you hear this voice, and it's very.
And you pretty much see it from everybody else's point of view of looking away.
Yeah.
Like that's where the camera is, so we don't see Thomas either.
Right. So then when they actually go back to the Moor,
this is where we're talking about the last 25 minutes being super intense.
So this is when it starts getting really tense. They're in the Moor. The weather is horrible.
They set up a tent.
So they set up a tent, and this is when they're all sitting in the tent kind of talking, and Eleanor says that Thomas left, like he is gone, like he's not there. And now she's afraid that someone's going to take over her body.
Right. And Alex, her dad, doesn't help her. He just sits there and stares.
Yeah, which is weird because...
That's not him.
No.
You know, every time something happens, he's right there to help her, giving her the numbers. Like 313. I can't remember what the numbers are exactly. Yeah, which I don't know.
No.
High. 3.13, that's all I know. So I remember the 313 part.
Yeah, I know there's a 5 in there somewhere.
Rep Detroit, 313. But, you know, you see her... This is the bleeding eye thing we talked about earlier.
The bleeding.
Her face goes up and you see it elongate through the shadow in the tent,
just start
which makes it even scarier because you don't actually see her face doing this. You see it as a shadow in the tent, and then her eyes start to bleed, and it's so fucking scary. And he's just staring at her.
So yeah, but you find out that Alex, he never came back to the tent.
He's still out in the bog with them.
He's looking for Bill and Liz out in the bog.
So who's in the tent with her that looks exactly like her dad? I wonder if that will come into our what we think of at the ending of the movie.
So they're surrounded by all of these goats, and the goats don't have eyes.
There's another scene that really doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's fucking cool.
It looks really cool.
It's a cool scene.
Yeah. And so then like
Eleanor's
she's
in bad shape.
She really is.
So they finally get through to an emergency team, and there's a part here where she's going on the radio and she's trying to call for help, the park ranger,
and she hears
their conversations from earlier, and it's another great. The scene is done so well.
Yeah.
But the emergency team does get to Eleanor, and they get her on the helicopter and they fly her back to the hospital.
So then we get they're all back. They're out of the Moor now, and Claire gets a phone call stating,
"Well, the park ranger's done."
Yeah, the park ranger's like, looks at Bill, says I'm done. Because Bill, he doesn't really give a shit about anybody else. He just
wants Danny.
He wants to do is find his son Danny, and he doesn't care who he takes down with him, nothing. So the ranger's like, I'm done. Liz is done.
Claire's done at this point too.
Yeah, so Claire gets a phone call, and the killer escaped the police when they were looking for, to show them where the kids were.
So the killer
escaped. So he's now out there in the Moor, and so Claire's like, Bill, he's out there somewhere. We can't go back out there.
Well, she goes to leave, and Bill kidnaps her, holds her at gunpoint, and he makes her go back with him. Now you're like, what is going on with Bill?
Bill, yeah, like what? Obviously something is going on with him because he was almost like a dad figure to her, like they grew up together.
Well, because at one point, like we didn't talk much about it because we want to leave some of the stuff open for you guys to actually see it, but she goes into the speech to Eleanor about how she always blamed herself, and she knew that Bill blamed her too, because it was her.
Well, she thought that Bill was going to blame her too.
Well, when Bill came, he just threw a big hug on her, and it was then that she knew that it wasn't her fault what happened to Danny.
Like
if it was her fault,
he would blame her.
He would blame her because that's the type of guy he was, but he didn't. So she knew it wasn't her fault after that.
So they're in the Moor, and he keeps saying the voices said that I'm supposed to bring you here, and I would get Danny back. Right. So the voices are telling him this.
And it was never supposed to be Danny.
No.
It was always supposed to be you that was taken. Well, Bill shoots at what looks like the killer, who's running.
And takes off, so Claire can, run.
Yeah, and she starts running. She gets stuck in the peat bog. Well, now is where it gets really crazy.
Yeah, so he comes back, and he's kind of, standing over Claire, and she's trying to get out of this peat bog. Like, it's sucking her in. Again, kind of like quicksand, but it's mud. And he's like, I understand now. And these demon-looking things...
look, they start popping up out of the bog around her.
So I don't know if they're, the kids that died, or it's just, these demon-looking...
It looks like kids.
Yeah.
Like, when you finally... when you're able to see them, it does look like the children.
And so they're emerging from the mud, and they take Claire, and then off in the distance you see Danny with Bill. So
and then at first you see Bill looking at Danny, and then you see them hugging each other, and that's where the movie ends.
Yep.
Now here's where we're going to explain what we think the ending of this movie means. Do you want to go first?
Sure. So so I think that the Moor obviously has some type of supernatural. They wanted the kids to, to keep this supernatural type thing fed, I guess, happy. And I think that it's able to like shapeshift into people, and so I think that the killer was part of the Moor, and it was going and taking all these kids to make the Moor happy.
Now you hear shapeshifting and you're like, well, that's ridiculous.
But I mean, Alex shapeshifted.
It shapeshifted into the form of Alex. Here at the end, it obviously shapeshifted into the form of Danny.
Right.
Because Danny's been gone for 25 years. Obviously, he's not a kid anymore. Obviously, he's dead. But it still shapeshifted into him to give Bill what he wanted.
Well, I mean, he never got to grow up and be an adult. Right. So he would shapeshift into what he was.
At the time.
Yes.
And also at the very beginning, his dad came and got him. I don't think Danny would have left with someone else.
Right. So it could have been
It could have shapeshifted into Bill to get Danny. And I think a lot of these kids, that's why they went with this thing. Now, here's where you could poke holes in the story. Mm-hmm. Why, one, did it stop for 25 years?
Once the thing got arrested or whatever.
Yeah. Two, what was arrested? If they obviously arrested a shapeshifter, it'd be able to get out. Three, what escaped when they were out there? Because obviously, I don't think there's ever really been a killer. I think, like Ashley does, I think it's always been the Moor that's been coming and lure things in to eat it. But again, there's so many different holes you can poke in. And I think that's fine. I think that's great because it's all open to interpretation. And any movie you can start poking holes in if you really start to stop and think about it. But what I want to know is, why did the killing stop when the thing was arrested? Because I get, I love the idea of they never showed the face because obviously it was a shape-shifting thing from the Moor.
Or, one of those demon things that, I don't know.
Right. And now you could say, well, when it got out, whatever, but, or it could possess people because maybe, the way Bill's acting, he's a rational guy throughout the whole movie. Now all of a sudden he thinks he's going to get his son back if he takes her out to the bog. So there's so many different interpretations on how you could think this movie ended, but
also, did it take Bill? Was that even Bill anymore?
Right.
I have that question too. Was that even actually Bill? Because they wanted Claire there the whole time. Even Eleanor at one point said,
I think I was wrong when I said it doesn't want her here.
It does want her here.
It does want her here.
It wanted Claire, so
she was the main target the whole time.
Yes.
We come to learn that she's the one. I believe that part. Now, where I am a little different, I think it was Bill. Because when Alex came back to the tent, he never talked. He just sat there and stared at Eleanor the whole time. And right when he came back in is when Thomas left. So obviously Thomas, that spirit, knew there was something wrong. And Alex, the way he just stared, like I said, never talked, never did anything, and then he just disappeared. Mm-hmm. So I think that the shape-shifting thing is probably where my mind would go. But again, there's still so many holes. One, what did they arrest? Two, why did the killing stop if it's just a shape-shifting thing from the Moor? Again, there's so many different things. And I would love to have, if you guys could give us your opinions down in the comments. I would love to know what you guys think of this ending and how you think this movie ended and what was the killer. Who did they arrest? I would love to know what you guys think. So let us know in the comments. Overall, though, I think I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 5. I had a lot of fun with this movie, and it kept me guessing. It kept me wondering what was going to happen. And I sat there thinking about it afterwards, so much so that I started poking holes in the whole story. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5.
I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I did enjoy this movie. I loved the constant feeling of dread and anxiety, and just the darkness of it. I don't know that I would necessarily say that it was fun.
No.
Because of the children going missing and just the real fear of all that. But I was entertained. It definitely kept me entertained. It definitely kept me guessing. So 3.5 out of 5.
Which is a fair score. So again, please let us know down in the comments what you guys think, and especially about the ending. I want to know how you guys think this ended. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It helps to build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror.
Stay who you are.
And we'll see you guys soon.
Bye, guys.